So welcome everyone to Showtime's Power Hour for March 2023. Our presenter tonight is Jimmy Dent, and Jimmy will be talking about engaging your virtual audience. And he's been a Toastmaster for 13 years and has actually earned 3 DTMs, one of those overachievers, I think. And Jimmy also speaks at different organizations and events on topics related to the quality profession, such as lean, operational excellence, Six Sigma, root cause analysis, and much more. But tonight we are fortunate to have Jimmy to chat with us about engaging the virtual audience. So Jimmy, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Can everybody see my screen? Raise your hand. Great. You know, that's the first way to engage the audience, is ask them to raise their hand. And we're going to talk about that. But first, the key to speaking, or to a speaker charisma, is the ability to engage the audience. And this is a quote by R.V. Robinson, who's a master speaker trainer and somebody I follow on LinkedIn a lot, among about 6 other professional speakers. Do you agree that with this statement that engaging the audience is really important to establish your charisma? Raise your hand. So what we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to talk about 10 methods to engage your audience. And then we'll have a Q&A period at the end for anybody that wants to ask questions. So if you've got a question, keep track of it, and we'll cover it at the end of the session. The first way to engage your audience is to ask them to do something like raise their hand or stand up. If you're, whether you're in a virtual or in person, you can ask people to raise your hand. Now, if you do that, you want to raise your hand yourself to demonstrate what you want them to do. Now, they could physically raise their hand, or they could use the little emoji or the little signal that uses a raised hand, which sometimes it's if you got a lot of audience members with their screen turned off. Then they'll use the little reaction thing to raise their hand to respond. Then you know they're actually listening and watching you. If they don't do anything, you might be wondering, are they paying attention? You want to pay close attention to the details. Now, this is to your own background. For example, if Connie was the speaker tonight, her background might be a little distracting to you. But as an audience member, you're not worried about the speaker being distracted. The audience can have whatever background they want. But other backgrounds, it could be confusing, anything like a scenery or even a blurred image, depending what's in the background and if it's busy. Because it could be distinguishable, and somebody may start focusing on what they think they see in a blurred background. This all pertains to the speaker. So make sure you've got a clear background. I use this stone wall as my background a lot of times when I'm speaking, but I got one that's a red brick wall. And I've got one that's a kind of a plain cream colored wall that's solid color. So there's nothing distracting. Even my blurred background has a lot of things in the background that could be distracting because people are trying to figure out what that shape is. And there's a lot of things on a shelf, and so it could be, if it's a busy blurred background, it could be distracting. You can use gamification. Now, if you don't know what gamification is, you can use the polling as a way to collect data, but you can also do gamification by asking a question, and the first few people that answer win a prize. So that keeps people alert. And you want to let them know you're going to do that, because that'll keep them alert they're going to be watching for the question because they want to win a prize. I did that at one presentation where I gave away 2 books during a live presentation when I asked the question, and the first person who got it right got the book. And I did that twice during a 30-minute presentation. You can also prepare or have the Zoom master prepare a poll with some information on it. And it doesn't have to be a poll, but it could be some questions or some other aspect that you can show, or is it data that you can show in a poll format? Or you could use it as a slide. You can show something in a slide that'll track, and you can ask questions about it and ask people to respond, give their comments, or raise their hand, whatever you want to do to keep them alive and active. You can use a story. Start off a speech with a story, or even a story in the middle, because that usually gets people to listen to stories. They love stories. And make sure it sounds like a story and not just some technical presentation. So, and you can always do a story if you want to just flash an image on the screen of something that represents the story, such as my demonstration here with the dragon and the castle. Then you can turn it off and you can tell the story. And you can use your hand gestures and so forth. And you can move around, play different characters by looking one way, then looking the other way to be characters. And that'll keep people alive. Because, you know, who doesn't like a story? Anybody here not like a story? The way to do it, a story, is you want to craft a strong introductory story right at the beginning. Don't make it too long. You can make it short. It can be a minute story. You can make it a compelling narrative. You don't have to do all these. You can do any one of these or a combination of them. But you can make a narrative while you're telling the story as a third person. You're not in the story, you're just conveying the story itself. You can tell a story that brings out your audience's emotions, a tearjerker or laughter. You can make a very funny story. And I remember one time a Toastmaster was giving a test speech at a contest. He gave a 42-minute speech. It was only supposed to be 5 to 7, but he had people literally almost falling out of their chairs, and they were laughing so hard they were catching their breath. And you know, he actually kept them captivated for 42 minutes. And it was a terrific story about him trying to date a girl in high school. And it was just extremely funny. It was not one-liners. It was a very, and in the end, it didn't seem like 42 hours. It only seemed like maybe 8 minutes, because the audience was so engaged into the listening to the story, you lost track of time. Of course, you want to keep it short. You don't want to give a 42-minute story. You know, I'd recommend, if you're doing a story, keeping it just the first 1 to 2 minutes of the speech. But you want to make sure it transitions into what your topic speech is. You know, anything you don't want to use a story that's unrelated to what you're trying to, the message you're trying to convey. I've given this story one time about the third race between the hare and the turtle as a lead-in to the topic I was presenting. And many people have not heard about the third race, let alone even the second race between the turtle and the hare. You can always use some kind of surprise to catch the audience off guard, you know, which will really grab their attention. I remember one time where a speaker threw out candy to the audience. Nobody was expecting it. He had the little Halloween type single bite candy bars, Three Musketeers, Snickers, and so forth. And he just walked out into the audience and started throwing them out to people. And of course, he caught a few people not paying attention, and they didn't see it coming, but it was definitely a big surprise because it wasn't telegraphed. Nobody knew he was going to do it. He had a bucket of candy up there on the stage behind the lectern, so nobody saw it, and he just grabbed it and immediately walked out into the audience, started popping it out. And you can use presentation content as transitions. You can have different content. You know, the old theory of the rule of threes, 3 parts to a speech: the introduction, body, and conclusion. But the body can be 3 different topics. And they can be unrelated, but you need to make a transition from one topic to another. And they can be unrelated, but you can create a transition that blends them together better. And always end a speech on a positive note. Now, even if it's a sad, tearjerker story, end it with a positive note. You want to let the audience leave the speech on a high and a positive feeling. You don't want them to leave like they're really tearful or depressed or sorry about what you were talking about. Choose an engaging theme. You know, it's what's the theme? The theme could be anything. Our theme tonight is engage in the audience. But you can have a theme to any speech. And it's a single theme, even though if you're going to talk about various things. I have a speech I've given about you want to be like a pencil. So the theme is your personal characteristics. And I relate your personal characteristics to that of a pencil. There's 5 parts of a pencil, or 5 functions of a pencil. I also like to use parables. The theme, another theme is what type of person are you? So I compare that to porpoises, whales, and sharks. And what kind of person or team are you a member of? And there's each of those animals, they go around in teams or groups, but they have different personalities. And the same thing with individual people is you can be a weasel, a troll, or a camel. And each one has a unique personality that you can talk about. For example, the weasel sneaks around and gets things done where you don't see them. They're always sneaking around the dark in the corners. They get things done before you expect it to get done. The troll is going to stand on the bridge and stop you from getting to where you want to go. And even if you change your mind, they're going to always be opposing you. So you can't get around the troll. The camel takes you on a journey. This is a person that never makes up their mind, always wants to consult other people, always wants you to consult other people, and will do anything to delay what you want to get done, but not really stop you from doing it. They're just causing delays. So that's how you can make a theme around a speech. And each one of those has 3 points, which we talked about earlier. So 3 parts of the body, and then there's a theme that they all tie together, even though the characters are completely different from each other. You can have a social media contest. For example, one is you can have a contest for the audience member with the best background or the most you could actually have multiple categories. You have the most interesting background. You can have other things. You can even have the audience vote on the backgrounds by using the poll method, which keeps them engaged. So, and you want to telegraph that ahead of time, make that part of your advanced presentation that it's going to include a contest to vote on best backgrounds or most interesting backgrounds. You can also have a contest of who's going to post a particular thing on social media. And it can be Facebook. You can decide what it is. It can be Facebook. It can be TikTok or any other social media source. And so you might have them challenge something about posting a YouTube or a video on something, their comments about your presentation, what they thought about it. And who you can pick out the best and give a prize away for it as a contest. You might get something small from the TI store and send it to them, or send them something else. And that's where you can offer virtual event swagger blings. You can still give this stuff away. You might have to send it to them. You got to get their mailing address. And this could be something just for people showing up. It could be something minor, something trivial that doesn't cost a lot to send. Or it could be for the first so many people that do something. You know, it might be like the first 5 people that log into the webinar. They win something. But you can decide how you want to do that, what you want to give away. And of course, this again, you want to advertise this ahead of time, because this is what may bring more people to the audience. So number 8, try user-selected presentation topics. What's that mean? What's the goals you want to achieve in your topic? What's the audience wants you to cover? So what you could do is you could start off by asking the audience what they want to learn. I remember one time when I was at a VP of Education session, TLI, the presenter didn't have a pre-packaged or PowerPoint presentation. The first thing he did was had an assistant, and he went around the room and asking everybody what they want to learn about the VP of Education. And he had an assistant that write it on the whiteboard. And then that's what he covered during the entire presentation. So the audience got to hear what they wanted to hear, not what the speaker wanted to tell them. And this is a good way to engage your audience, because the person that brings up that goal is going to really listen to you, because they're the one that wants to know the answer to the question or the topic that they gave you. So don't be afraid to ask the audience what they want to learn or what they want to hear about. You can give a quiz at the end of the speech and give away some bling or prizes too, depending who does it. And the quiz could be, and however you want to give it. The quiz could be on the content of the speech. Tell them that up front, that at the end there's going to be a quiz on what I'm talking about, because that helps to keep people engaged. You can even give a quiz, multiple quizzes throughout the speech. Because if you're 45 minutes long, you could give a quiz every 10 minutes on what you just covered. And rather than wait till the very end and give a quiz, you keep them alert because they don't know when that quiz is going to come up next. But you can tell them you're going to do multiple quizzes. And of course, you want to have those quizzes pre-prepared if you're giving a canned presentation that you've prepared, because that way the quizzes really relate to what you talked about. But you can be very creative with the quizzes. And you tie something else into some kind of reward system for the person that gets the right answer first. And if you do it multiple times, you give away multiple prizes. And the last thing is, don't just rely on your words only. Visuals, they say gestures and visuals and body language makes up about 58% of the content of the speech, because people read into what you're saying with supporting visuals, whether they're gestures, body language, or graphical visuals on a screen. You want to make it tied into what you're talking about, and it helps to reinforce what you're talking about rather than just the words. Now, if you get too busy with visuals or too complicated of visuals, it can be distracting or lose interest. So you want to make sure the visuals are simple and not too complicated. So what we covered was encourage audience participation in any way, really. Raise your hand, answer questions, fill out a survey or poll, whatever. Pay close attention to your own background if you're speaking. You want to make sure your background is not distracting the audience, where they're focusing on your background and trying to figure out what's there or looking at it, rather than really watching you and your words, because you want them to be paying attention to your gestures or your whatever else you're doing. You can use gamification and live polling. Use the live poll in a different way, or put up a slide with game questions. Use storytelling techniques. That always grabs people's attention. Use an engaging theme for your presentation that you're giving your speech. So that, I've heard speeches where the title, you can't tell what they're going to talk about with the title. And I've seen that at TLIs and conferences where it's like, this was totally different than what I thought it was going to be about based on the title. So your theme should be very clear. Which is your title? Like tonight, I was engaging the audience. If I didn't say engage in the audience and I'd said something like slippery bananas, even though I could tie how slippery bananas ties into engaging the audience, you wouldn't have known what I was going to talk about. You can host a media contest where you have a contest with people posting things on social media. You can offer virtual event swag. Now, all of these you can actually do, whether it's in person or virtual, but I'm focusing on virtual. You can still give away virtual swag and bling to people that attend. You just have to mail it to them rather than hand it to them in person at an event. And user selected topics are asking the audience for questions. I don't know what happened to my screen. Here we go. You can ask the audience what they want to hear about. And, rather than just giving a presentation thinking you know what they want. You can always ask them what they want to hear about. You want to be relative to a specific topic in your theme. But I could have started this off by, I'm going to talk about engagement. What do you want to learn about engagement? So I could have asked you that and collected that, had somebody collect that, and then we could cover each item. And then you can inject quizzes. That's the last thing. Inject quizzes throughout your presentation. And you could do that about, at least 3 times, I would recommend, rather than just one quiz at the end of the session. Because if you do it in the middle and you don't vary in time, don't do it on equal time periods. Vary the time. Might be one after just 5 minutes or 10 minutes, then another one 5 minutes later, another one 15 minutes later. Because if you do it very regularly, they're going to be anticipating the timing. They'll be watching and be anticipating. But if they don't know when it's going to come up, they're going to stay a little bit more alert. And then lastly is don't rely just on your words. Use visuals, use body language, use gestures, and, get them to be watching you and make sure they're not watching your background. And that's what I've got. So now I'm going to open up to any questions. Bobby.
Yes, so on your recap slide, you had 3 of the line items were highlighted in yellow. Was there a reason for those?
That was a mistake.
Oh.
Somehow for some reason I couldn't get the other alternating lines yellowed.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got my attention.
And that happens.
Yeah.
Funny.
Can you address energy? What I'm having difficult in this online environment is when you're at a contest even, and because of bandwidth, they're asking you not to show your video of yourself, and they want you to black out screens. As a presenter, that just kind of sucks it out of me, and I try to be overly enthusiastic or animated, and then I come off across fake. So there's that fine line. So what suggestions would you have when maybe the majority of audience has just a black screen?
I recommend the audience don't turn your screen off. I have not seen where having everybody in the audience affects bandwidth. I've given presentations at ASQ, which is American Society of Quality, and some companies where I've got 60 people in attendance and everybody's got their screen on, and I don't see a bandwidth. Now, there has been some problems with Zoom the last few weeks with flickering if you've got other programs open on your desktop. And especially if anything's got a movie or anything animation to it. So like tonight, I've got everything closed down and I don't think I'm getting any flickering. But I've seen it before. I've had flickering where I had other things open, and I've seen people talking and they went to flickering. But I recommend having it because you can't really tell whether the audience is engaged in what you're saying if you can't see them. Because you can't see them laugh. You can't see them whether they're looking away or distracting or whether they're just looking down the whole time. And because it could be taking notes, but they're not watching you. So
yeah, you don't get that energy you feel when you're in a room.
Yeah,
you can actually feel it. They don't have to be
to see all the audience.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else with any questions?
Jimmy, I want to, sorry, Bobby, I wanted to comment that I loved your presentation. I thought it was excellent. And I loved how you laid out the 10 steps and reviewed them at the end. I liked also how you started with the interaction. And I think maybe you had a missed opportunity when you could have also said, I want to invite the audience to either interrupt me or speak up if and when you have a question, or hold them to the end, jot them down and hold them to the end because we have some allotted time to do that.
Mhm.
That would have been another example of engaging your audience and something maybe that you would have mentioned, and it would have made the intro a little more powerful and memorable. Just an idea. I loved it. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And yes, I agree that allowing the audience to just ask a question when they have it really does a better job of engaging them. And
Absolutely. I just didn't know, like I had questions as I went, and I wondered if I should interrupt you or if I should wait.
it's
And
okay
so
with
I
me.
guess my
Yeah,
point is
anytime.
maybe clarify that at the beginning.
No, that's right. It's good. It's a good way to get the audience to more engaged.
Right
Because
on.
sometimes they won't take the notes and they'll forget the question at the end
That's right.
and forget some of what you told them. But at the spur of the moment, they've got it in their mind. You want to raise their hand and ask the question, or just speak up.
But if you're timed and you have a tight schedule, then you might want to tell them, look, I encourage feedback for this allotted time at the end, but make sure you want to hit your marks and your. Thank you again, sir. It was excellent.
Anybody else with any questions? Bobby?
Yes, it helps to unmute. So Jimmy, when you were talking about bling and giveaways, I started thinking about that, and I was trying to come up with types of electronic bling. So I thought of a couple, like you could maybe give an ebook if you've got one, or some kind of a handout, or speakers in a contest would get a certificate or whatever. But do you have any other ideas, or actually anybody here have more ideas for electronic bling that you would not have to mail, that you could give for a prize?
An ebook would be an excellent example. And for an audience, that could be more valuable than just a certificate. I'm not sure how many people keep the certificates. We've got so many now with pathways and contests. It's just, where's it go? I used to keep all my certificates in a 3-ring binder. Now I don't do it anymore. I keep them all electronic on the, just for record, but I collect a lot of ebooks. And so an ebook, and I find a lot of stuff on PDF drive. And there's other PDF downloadable ebooks that you can find. And there's a lot on there for public speaking. But you can also give an ebook away on the theme of what you're talking about. So rather than just public speaking, you might, I give talks on lean and operational excellence and root cause analysis. I could give away a book on one of those topics. So
Also, Bobby, everyone likes coffee.
what's that?
Everyone likes coffee.
So how do you give that electronically?
You would
I've
get
given Starbucks certificates.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Or an Amazon certificate, I suppose, or something like
Yeah,
that.
you can
Okay.
send
Totally.
gift certificates digitally. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it would depend on the worth and how would you want to do it. Maybe you have a top 3, right? And whoever asks the best questions, then they win or whatever, right? You'd have to kind of figure that out.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going through a digital transformation where a lot of things are now digital. I mean, I shop at Fry's and they've got digital coupons now instead of paper coupons.
Mhm.
And you have to use the digital coupon to get either the discount or the extra fuel points. A lot of times they give away 4 times or 5 times or 10 times the fuel points for your purchase based on the digital coupon. And
So does anybody else have any more ideas of what to give away digitally? I like what we're talking about.
any other questions then?
Actually, I have one more that's a little bit off the topic, baby, but you mentioned the 2nd and 3rd races of the tortoise and the hare.
Oh.
And you didn't tell us what they were.
Yeah.
Well, the first race is the rabbit and the tortoise. The rabbit went and then got lazy and the tortoise passed him up. Well, the second race, the opposite happened. The rabbit didn't go to sleep or get lazy and just really blew out the turtle. The third one was other people said, well, this course was too easy. So they challenged them and they had water hazards and swinging vine hazards. And they had other competitors. The turtle and the hare teamed up together. So like to cross the creek, the rabbit can't swim, but the turtle could. So the rabbit sat on the turtle's back. The turtle can't swing in a vine, but the rabbit can. So the turtle hung onto the rabbit and they swung across the vine, across the ravine. So in the end, the turtle and the rabbit both won together because they used teamwork. And that's the lesson behind it, was you can get a lot more done with teamwork than as an individual.
Thanks, Jimmy.
And that's a 5 to 7 minute speech. Because you go into the story and all the elaborateness of it. And the first race, the second race, and then the third race, they really put their heads together and came up with teamwork. And again, there's 3 parts. The first race, the second race, and then the surprise third race. Any other questions or comments?
Hi, Jimmy, this is Robin. I've got a question or a thought, I guess it just occurred to me, was if you're trying to capture questions, perhaps during a meeting or a speech, and you don't know if you're going to have time, when you're in person, a lot of times you can write them on a flip chart or something and call it a parking lot. And then you could organize them or come back to them later. Does anybody have any ideas about how you might handle that well in this kind of environment? Trish is raising her hand.
There is a whiteboard feature in Zoom that you can activate, and you can use it just like you'd use a whiteboard in a classroom then. You can also bring up Notepad or Word or another app and have it shared on the screen and capture your notes that way as well. Then if you're doing it in a file like that, you can then post the file, if you want to share the file with the audience. But there are ways to do it.
Yeah, you can also have an assistant keeping track of the chat window for questions.
Oh, no, I'm coming on.
And they could be cut and pasting
This is
the
almost
question into a Word document to compile rather than scrolling up and down constantly. So if somebody comes up with a question, they could be keeping track and documenting the question. And again, like Mike said, depending on your presentation timing, you could just have your assistant interrupt and say, Trish has a question right now. She's posting in the chat, or you could say, Trish has a question. She posted, Trish, would you like to ask the question? So there's various different ways, depending on the timing of your speech, how much duration you have, and what technology you want to use, and whether you've got an assistant that could help you. Those are all good ideas, Trish. Any other ideas? Any other questions? Evelyn, you haven't spoken up at all, have you?
No, I really don't have any questions, but I gave a presentation to a Speechcraft, and I did like you. I went back and I hit on every point that I had talked about. And when I was done, they critiqued me by saying, you repeated the speech. Why did you repeat your speech?
Oh.
And it was like, well, they were brand new. So I thought if I just went back and just hit the highlights in my summary, that would help them remember, but they didn't take it that way.
Interesting.
So Jimmy,
Bobby's got her hand up.
yeah, you mentioned about in the flyer, we saw something about how to spot those visual cues when people, your audience may be losing attention. So did you want to talk a little more about that? And what do you do
Well,
when you see that? Is that the time to, what do you do?
yeah, okay. Well, like if you see somebody with their head down a lot, they're not really looking at you. They got their head down, they may be reading something, they may be busy. Call on them. Call them and ask them a question. Yeah, it could be simple. What do you think of what I just talked about? So, or you could see, that's why I always say have the screen on. Because then you can see them. They could be glassy-eyed where it's not, they look like they're frozen, but they're not frozen because they got a little movement to them, but they're just staring off into space. So there's a lot of things you could do that you watch for. The one that looks like they're really not paying attention is and that could be various different things. They could be their head down. They could be very quiet. That's why I called on Evelyn. She hadn't asked a question yet. It's going to call on Lori, see if she's got anything she wants to say. And so this is what you can do. You can go around the room, even in the middle of a speech, you can stop, ask a question, and go pick on people. Because as soon as you do that, everybody's going to wake up because they're going to call on me next. Yeah. So that's always a way to keep people alert. Even if they got their screen on, they may think they're going to try to call on me next. But people will tend to turn off their screen, mute their mic. And I always tell them, don't mute your mic either. Because if you're giving something humorous, you want to hear them laugh. So not just see them laugh, but you want to hear it.
And you probably don't like these Showtime workshops because we always mute people unless they're invited to speak.
Yeah, it's like when I talked about my background. Let me show you. It's if you had a background like this, that could be really distracting if you're the speaker.
Wow.
You're going to be looking around your background trying to see what's all in there. So that's why I said use a plain background. Trish has a fairly good one, but I wouldn't have the Eiffel Tower in there. I have this one as a plain white background.
I like your brick one better.
Yeah, and Jimmy, when you move your hands with the plain white one, do you get bleeding?
Well, you could with any kind of background, you could get, depending where you're at. Because sometimes if you're out of the focus, there's a lot of cameras that have automatic focusing. And when you're out of the focusing range, something bleeds. So this is my red brick where I feel like I'm up against a brick wall.
That's cool.
And I see blur. I got a lot of things in the background. And so me, this could be distracting to have a blurred background. Now, Bobby, you've got a fairly simple background, and so does Robin. But Evelyn might have a little bit busier background. And with a doorway and some things on the wall. So that could be a little distracting. And so I try not to use the blurred background unless I'm someplace where I've got a very simple background. But my favorite is the plain stone wall. And a lot of people have actually thought that was a real wall.
Yes, that's actually an excellent background for you.
Yeah, it's very
And
sharp.
I always
and
try to
clear.
use a more contrasting shirt so it doesn't blend in. Like Trisha's shirt kind of blends in with her background. It's a dark blue with a black background. Where Mike's wearing a blue shirt, but it doesn't blend in with his background. So always test it out first too, to look out how your clothing blends in with the background.
I thought perhaps my desert was a little busy.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Of course, I could have done the Oompa Loompas for you too.
I've got this one for the Superstition Springs,
Oh, that's beautiful.
for the
Well,
springtime.
Jimmy, you could offer a prize and give us your stone background.
Yeah, I can always do that too. There's another idea for a digital, give away a background.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
My wife's telling me to speak down lower.
Almighty.
So any other
A lot
questions?
depends. No, I just wanted to add a comment when you're talking about, what to give away. A lot depends too on who your audience is. Like I noticed that not all Toastmasters are good at finding the timing backgrounds or finding a Toastmasters appropriate one, or the branded, backgrounds. Those, a set of that would be really good to give away as well, and it would help professionalize, their Toastmasters experience.
Yeah,
But if
like
you're
if you-
talking to project managers, then that's a different story.
Right,
The
right. You want to
good
get maybe
visuals on
something-
project management or timelines or requirements, questions, those kinds of things would be the things you could put together and give a bundle of, of good assist sheets is what I call them.
Yeah.
One sheets.
Right.
I call those cheat sheets. Same thing.
Another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's all sorts of types of things that could be digital in a way. And, we have in ASQ, I give presentation, there's a lot of different cheat sheets or what they call checklists that help people out. So we give them away. We even gave away a membership one time to ASQ, a student
another
member
good
to
idea.
a student chapter.
Yeah, I don't think that's allowed in Toastmasters, but
Well, it's allowed by individuals, not by the club can't pay for it out of their club treasury, but an individual can pay for somebody else's membership. Any other questions?
okay, I don't see any other questions. Jimmy, did you want to give us a quick wrap up and then we'll close the session?
Well, first I want to say, I thought there was a lot of good questions asked. I'm glad everybody did have questions. And I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. And I'm going to put in the chat, if you have any questions you want to come up with later, feel free to email me.
Okay. And in closing also, I'd like to just remind everyone that Showtime Toastmasters meets on the second and fourth Mondays of each month at 6:30 p.m. And we meet 100% on Zoom. You can find information about our meetings by going to showtime.toastmastersclubs.org. We'll put that in the chat. And anyone is invited to our meetings. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the
Yeah,
recording.
and invite your friends to our meetings too. We have very interesting meetings.
Okay.
And
thank you, Jimmy, for the presentation tonight.
well, I want to, they say not to thank the audience, but I want to thank the audience for the questions they asked. Because I think that's part of the real value of a presentation, is giving the audience the opportunity to ask questions and engage the speaker.
Okay, thank you
Works both
again, Jimmy.
ways. Thank you.